Reading is so important, and this is kind of slightly tangential, but I've always thought it was interesting that I've heard of the best way to like teach like a child when you're teaching them to read is always giving them books just slightly outside of their level because then they have to work for it a little bit. Like they have the ability to do it, but they're going to be constantly learning new language that way. If they're stuck in like I'm comfortable with like this level reading book, then they're not learning any new vocabulary, they're not being challenged at all, so giving them that little bit extra. And it's also interesting because I grew up there was like the general guide in our house was that I was allowed to read books written before 1960, and if they were written after 1960, I had to like kind of make sure that they didn't have anything bad in them. Which, looking back on books like The Great Gatsby, maybe I didn't read it till high school, which was good. But
Right.
anyway, I grew up reading a lot of older books, like turn of the century 1900s,
Hmm.
Anne of Green Gables, Little Women kind of books, and there is a distinct difference in books that were written back then and books that are written now. And I think it changed with the advent of television. That books written now are more visual, like they're just easy to read. They're a lot of candy, and even like quote unquote candy books from like the early 1900s that weren't any kind of great literature, they still challenge you to read and they have vocabulary in such a way that you
Right.
feel like you're getting something out of it. And it was just something that I've personally noticed in like the
Hmm.
reading that I've done. And I think that introducing kids to books where it's like you're going to challenge them, you're going to give them new words, you're going to help them be able to think in a way that they wouldn't be doing just by watching television.
Absolutely. No, I mean it's important too. You know, when you read G.K. Chesterton, when you read C.S. Lewis, when you
Mhm.
read any of the great writers today like Joseph Pfeiffer, and you read
Oh, I love Joseph Pieper.
yeah, yeah,
He's
yeah.
great.
Sorry if I mispronounce his name. Yeah, when you read, and it really it does, because even for myself, all these years of formation education, just by stretching the heart, stretching the mind,
Mhm.
reading something that makes me pause. I mean, there are some books that I return to because I really didn't grasp maybe that chapter. I want to go back and read that chapter. So what I like about just to finish that little thought and then just toss it back, but it's like when you think of the with parents, back to parents, what I always loved about classical education, and have been part of it, in these 30 years of priestly life and encouraging, classical education, was the fact that it engages parents. So
How
it's
does it do
meaning
that?
is that we would not only encourage the child or the student or the young adolescent, young adult to
Mhm.
read, but the parent to read it, to pick up the same book, and have a discussion with your children, because sometimes what happens is parents want to kind of just pass on the educational, formational aspect to someone else.
Mhm.
And the church makes it clear that the primary educator of a child is the parent. And so the parent doesn't have to be, and this is, I think, sometimes deters people from homeschooling or maybe becoming more engaged. They think are incapable. They maybe don't think they have enough of an education to help their children to a certain degree. And let's be honest, some things, yeah, I mean, even if you went to college, even if you got a degree, a master's degree, some of the things that children are learning today in school, especially in math and science,
Chemistry,
yeah,
physics,
are
that kind
things that
of
we ourselves didn't study per
yeah.
se. So, yeah, some things, but reading a good book together and then
Mhm.
sitting down with the child and discussing the book.
Mhm.
What did you get from the chapter today? It engages a conversation too.